Hey book readers. Today is a highly anticipated video of a complete summary of Fourth Wing, so you'll be ready to read the sequel Iron Flame this Tuesday. Fourth Wing was published April of this year, and we are already getting book 2 this Tuesday, November 7th of the same year. It is insane for such a complex high fantasy series to be published so quickly together. I was shocked and also extremely excited. I read this when it came out, and then I just reread it so I could make this video. We're gonna do a comprehensive summary of the entire book if you want to remember all the details without having to reread. So Fourth Wing gives us the story of Violet Sorrengail. We are in Navarre, and the majority of this book happens at Basgiath War College. It starts off on conscription day, and this is the day where all of the 20-year-olds who live in Navarre have chosen a quadrant that they're going to enter. Basgiath War College has 4 quadrants that they can choose from. You can be in the infantry quadrant, the healers quadrant, the scribes quadrant, or the Riders Quadrant. In this book, we get the story of the Riders Quadrant. The Riders Quadrant of Basgiath War College is basically a war zone. You kill or be killed. They're trying to earn their right to be bonded with a dragon in order to be able to channel magic from the dragon. They have to go through a series of challenges and all kinds of issues in order to prove themselves as a rider. So we start off with Violet Sorrengail. Everyone else in Navarre has been training for their selected quadrant their entire lives. Violet was raised to be a scribe. It tells us that almost a year ago her father died, and her father was the one who raised her to be a scribe. However, her mother is the general of the military, and she has decided 6 months ago that Violet is going to the Riders Quadrant. So Violet only had 6 months to prepare for the Riders Quadrant. Her sister is Mira, and she is 26, and she is also a rider, and she's very well known for being tough and challenging and pretty much the same as her mother. And she also had a brother who died 5 years ago during the fight with the rebels. It tells us that shortly after her brother died that her father started having chest pains and that his heart gave out. And then we also learned that Violet has pale skin, pale eyes, and pale hair, where it's like silvered and grayed on the end from a sickness that her mother had when she was pregnant that nearly killed her. It also affected the way that her body developed, a condition that makes her joints more fragile and not as strong, so she often dislocates her joints, and she has lived in chronic pain her whole life. At the beginning of the book, her sister is there fighting her mother for Violet to not have to go to the Riders Quadrant, and her mother says, Violet has been fighting pain her entire life. She might be more prepared than you and your brother were. We learn a little bit about Violet, that she has chronic illness and chronic pain, which is one of the reasons, apparently, that her father raised her as a scribe. We also learn that her mother is a storm wielder. She's very tough and no mercy. She has no kindness for her own daughter. She is like, all right, go to conscription day. I'll see you in 3 years. I'm not going to be able to acknowledge you as my daughter. I'm not going to help you at all. In fact, it'll probably be harder for you. And Violet knows that her mom is like that, and it just is like that. She's headed out to conscription day. Her mother already has her room packed up. Her sister starts helping her, giving her some advice. She unpacks everything that she packs. So this is too much. This is too heavy. You're going to fall off the parapet. She helps her know what to pack, what will be important, gives her some advice. She gives her a jacket made of her dragon's scales that she says will protect her, that people won't be able to pierce. And so she wears this special gear. Another thing about her brother is that he had the signet of a mender, which was very rare, and he was very well known for having that ability. Right off the bat, it starts very quick on conscription day, where Violet is going to the parapet, which is basically like this giant, slippery, narrow path up super high in the air that they have to cross in order to get to their section of the war college. She's like, people are dropping left and right. Storm comes in and it's raining and it's already slippery and people are dropping and they just die. All these cadets, her sister told her to wear these special shoes that are gripping so she won't fall off of the parapet. On her way up the stairs to the parapet, she meets someone named Rhiannon, which will be her friend throughout the book. She notices that Rhiannon has like slippery shoes on, and so she gives her one of her shoes. Violet takes one of Rhiannon's shoes because she says this will give you a better chance to survive. So we already see from the beginning that Violet has a soft side for people and is willing to put herself in harm's way in order to see other people survive. So she gets to the parapet, Rhiannon goes across, she gets up there, and we meet Xaden Ryerson. And this is the name of the person that her sister warned her to stay away from. We learn that this is the son of the leader of the rebellion. His father, whose name was Finn Ryerson, and he was told to everyone to have been a madman with crazy conspiracy theories, and he was executed. At this point, we don't learn much else except for Xaden Ryerson is his son, and she knows he is out to get her because her mother was part of the leadership that decided he would be executed. But then also Xaden's father is the one who killed Violet's brother. So it's complicated, and it's already starting with a history. Xaden is at the parapet at the front watching people go. There's already tension between the two of them. So she starts to go across. That's when we meet that person behind her, and his name is Jack Barlow, and he ends up being a bad guy in the book. He does not like her. Really, he wants to take out anybody that's in his way. He kills the person behind her, and so now she's in a hurry to get across the parapet because Jack is coming for her. She makes it across right before Jack gets her, and then she turns and has him at knife point. He's like still threatening her, and she starts quoting regulation to him. He can't harm her because of such and such law. The people there are like, if you want to kill her on your own time, but not here. And so she gets out of it at this point. So then after they make it across the parapet, they just start classes in the college, and we start learning things about war and about how to be a leader in war, different types of dragons, their different qualities based off of their color, the shape of their tail, things like that. And we learn that Xaden's dragon, which is named Sigale, is one of the strongest, and that people are terrified of her. We also learn that black dragons are rare, and they're the most cunning, and they tell us that the stronger the dragon, the stronger the ability of the rider. The stronger the bond, the stronger the ability. So if you get the strongest dragon, you will have a stronger ability. Each rider has a unique signet from their dragon. So basically, when they bond with a dragon, the dragon marks them with a relic that gives them the ability to channel their power from the dragon. They get their magic from the dragons and with their bond, and there's no other way to get the magic without their bond. So the riders here are trying to prove themselves to these dragons and are trying to be able to bond with dragons so that they can channel power. They can channel power just for like regular things like creating light and things like that, but then each individual rider has their own unique signet. What the book tells us is that the signet is something that reflects the person at their core, and it's something that was always there but is now fueled by the magic of the dragon. For example, we learn that Xaden's signet is that he can wield shadows. Violet tells us something like, oh, it makes sense that the signet reflects who you are at your core because Mira can create wards and she's super protective. Xaden can wield shadows and he's very secretive. So those are the examples that they give. And they also give the example of Dane, which we haven't talked about yet. And his signet is a secret because it's very powerful, and he has the ability when he touches someone, he can look into their memories. She says Dane's power reflects him because he wants to know everything about everyone. Before she gets to the Rider's Quadrant, Mira says, stay away from Xaden Ryerson, and she says, go find Dane Atos. So Dane was one of her best friends growing up, a childhood friend, and he's in the Rider's Quadrant a year ahead of her. When she gets there and she sees him, we find out that he's a wing leader in the second year. He has made a name for himself. There seems to be a friendship between them, and the book makes you think there might be something more there. Also, as part of preparing for the college, Mira gives Violet a book that was written by her brother that has all kinds of advice for the War College or the Writer's Quadrant. She says, like, it has things in here you're not supposed to know, so keep it hidden. We get a little bit at the beginning about a book that her father would always read to her, a book of fables she wanted to bring along, and her sister makes her leave it at home. And that's all we hear about that at the beginning, but then it plays the larger role down the road. So as part of the training in the Writer's Quadrant, they have to go through challenges with other cadets, like wrestling or like fighting, sparring. Violet obviously is at a disadvantage because she's pretty small and she's kind of weak. She's only been training for 6 months. In the book that Mira gave her from her brother, it tells her where she can go to see who she's being challenged by the next day. The instructors choose it ahead of time, even though nobody else knows that. So Violet's figured out how she can see who she's going to be up against, and she uses her smarts to defeat them since she doesn't have the strength. She starts poisoning the people that she's up against, so she defeats them because of sickness and things like that. One night after curfew, she's out getting some of the things she needs to make a poison, and she's climbed up in a tree and she sees Xaden and some other cadets. So this is where we learn a little bit more about the children of the rebellion. There are 107 children of the members of the rebellion. Each of them have a mark that designates them as a child of the rebellion. And Xaden's is the biggest, and it like comes up his neck and down his wrist. He's also the oldest of the children. She's up in this tree and she sees several of these cadets and they all have the mark. So she realizes it's all children of the rebellion and she's spying on them, and she basically just hears that Xaden's just trying to help take care of them, and he's giving them advice on what to do and trying to help them stay alive. Xaden knows she was there. He confronts her, they talk a little bit, but he doesn't do anything to her. He doesn't get her in trouble and she doesn't tell on him because there's some rule about the number of children of the rebellion that can be together at one time. One of the aspects of the college that they have to get through in order to get to the dragons is to complete the gauntlet. And so the gauntlet has these terrifying obstacles that they have to get through that seem impossible, especially for Violet because she has weaknesses that make things harder for her. There is one part of it that she just cannot figure out. She sees Xaden the night before and he helps her and he says the right way isn't the only way. She makes it over the final obstacle using her knife, runs up and she can't get it because she's too short, so she runs up and uses her knife to pull herself over, and people try to say that she cheated, but she quotes the regulations back to her that she knows better than anybody else because she trained to be a scribe and nobody else did. It says anything that you brought on you is now a part of your person. So she had brought some weapon and they said now it's part of your person, so it's not against the rules. Once they've made it through the gauntlet, then they get to go through threshing, and that's where you walk in front of all of the dragons. They get a chance to look at you and see your intentions and things and decide if they want to bond with you or not. So it's like a very intimidating process, and it's super scary because they just walk and all the dragons are lined up and they like smell them, and people that the dragons don't like their intentions or something's wrong with them, they just burn them up straight away. So they had been told that there are 100 dragons willing to bond this year. So they said it's 100 dragons lined up, but then there's actually 101 because there's a small golden dragon that they see. That's a feather tail, which is very rare. No one has ever seen or bonded with a feather tail. And so everyone is surprised by that. It also always talks about if the dragon dies, the bonded rider dies. But if the rider dies, the dragon doesn't always die. Sometimes if the bond is very strong, the dragon might die when the rider dies, but not usually. In these chapters talking about threshing, they do the walk in front of the dragons and then they go back and they are supposed to go find the dragons that they want to approach. And if the dragon accepts them, then they can be bonded. And otherwise, if you don't get a dragon, then you have to go through again and the next year as a first year. As she's waiting to be bonded with a dragon, she hasn't felt like any of them are calling to her. She sees a group, including Jack Barlow, which is her nemesis, going to attack that small yellow dragon, the feather tail. She knows that if she goes to defend the dragon, they're probably going to kill her because there's like 3 or 4 against 1. She goes anyways to protect the feather tails and confronts them, and Xaden is also there, but because of some of the laws and regulations, he's not allowed to interfere or help her, but they start attacking her. She notices something that matters to her later in the book. Even though he is not allowed to interfere, she recognizes that he took one step forward, like he might interfere if she needed him, but she takes care of it on her own because a black dragon comes, which is the most rare, the biggest dragon, and then the strongest, and he chooses Violet. We learn his name is Tern. He has a long name. It's like Ternanok or something. It's like, sounds Scottish to me. I don't know. Whenever a dragon chooses you to bond, dragons can talk inside their minds. So the dragon talks to her. We learn some things about him, that he's over a century old, that his previous rider died in the Tyrish rebellion, and that he hasn't come out to be bonded in 5 years. We've learned that he's the strongest dragon of all the dragons, so he's the dragon leader. The black dragon comes, chooses Violet, and then one of the dudes tries to kill Violet, and the black dragon kills the dude. Tern defends her already by killing one of the dudes. The other guys flee. Out of nowhere, big surprise to everyone, the small yellow dragon also chooses Violet to bond. So now she's been bonded with 2 dragons, which has never happened. Her name is Andarna. The leadership freaks out and they say we need to convene and talk about it. And then the dragons convene and talk about it. And Tern is like, the leaders have nothing, this is a dragon problem, not the leader problem. They have no say in what we do. And we say it's fine that you're bonded with 2. She gets bonded to Tern, Tairn. And what's complicated about that is that Tairn is mated to Sigale, and Sigale is Xaden's dragon. Now things are very complicated because when dragons are mated, they cannot be separated from each other for very long at all, or they will die. Along with that, because they're mated to each other, when something happens to one, it happens to the other. So if Tairn dies, Sigale could die. So now, in a complicated way, Violet dies, it could lead to Xaden dying. So now their lives are tethered to each other. If she dies, it sets off a chain of events to where he could die too. It's like forced proximity, enemies to lovers, because neither of them want to be next to each other. And in fact, they're like enemies where she thought he might kill her, but now he can't, because then that would make his own life at risk. But then it's also complicated because since the black dragon is so strong and big, now the cadets that did not get chosen by a dragon are out to get Violet, because if they can kill a rider who was bonded, then there's a chance that that dragon will choose them to bond. It's so complicated. So now Violet is their target because they want Tairn to choose them. She has to stick with Xaden because he'll protect her from all these unbonded cadets who are trying to kill her to get to Tairn. Whenever the dragon chooses to bond you, that's when they put the mark on you. Violet's mark is a black dragon mid-flight that goes shoulder to shoulder across her back, and then also a golden silhouette of a small one inside that. And this is the relic that's the conduit for the magic given by the dragons. When they use their magic, like when it channels, mark sometimes burns or like they feel it in their mark for whatever reason. All this time within the book, there's been scenes of Violet and Dane, which is her childhood friend. He seems to care for her. He wants her to be safe, but all along he's been saying to her, please go to the Scribes Quadrant. Please, I'll sneak you out. You shouldn't be here. You're going to die. Let's go to the Scribes Quadrant. It's just showing like he doesn't think she can do it and he thinks she's weak and she should run away. And she starts getting mad about that. So there's like a rift in their friendship, but they're still friends, and she thinks she might have feelings for him. But then after she bonds the dragons, she kisses him. She feels no chemistry. She's like, no, nothing. That was it. There's no heat. They were childhood friends. She had a crush. She always thought there might be more. But now that she's here and she's getting to know him, she's starting to realize maybe he doesn't care for her in the way that she's looking for. And she comes to find out about him that he cares more about following the rules than he does about her, than he does about doing what's best for Violet. Let's see. More things that it tells us. We talked about how children of the members of the rebellion are marked with a relic also so that it's known, and that all of their parents were murdered for being in the rebellion. A signet is the power that the dragon gives you when you're bonded, and it manifests when your dragon thinks you're ready to wield it. It seemed like there were like two parts to the power. There was just like magic. When the dragon thinks you're ready, they'll give you magic. And then there's like the signet power that is specific to each rider that can appear at any time. Sometimes is too much for the rider to handle and like kills them instantly. It says if it doesn't manifest like 6 months after you bond, then bad things happen and the magic can consume you because it has no way to get out. Then in chapter 18, we are introduced to Jacinia, which is, if you will remember, or if you've seen my reel, at the beginning of the book where it has the Basgiath War College map, it has this little transcription at the beginning saying, the following text has been faithfully transcribed from Navarian into the modern language by Jacinia Nilewort. I don't know how to pronounce her name. Curator of the Scribe Quadrant at Basgiath War College. All events are true and names have been preserved to honor the courage of those fallen. May their souls be commended to Malik. Since this has happened, people are like, why is it Jacinia? You know, like, what is this saying? Is this saying our people die or whatever? Anyway, so this is Jacinia, who has written all this down. She's a friend of Violet's from the Scribe Quadrant. So Violet knew her before because they were both going to be scribes together, even though now she's not. She uses sign language to communicate, and she works in the Scribes Quadrant. So Violet goes to the Scribes Quadrant for something and talks to Jacinia. While she's there, she asks Jacinia if she has a copy of the Book of Fables that her dad used to read to her. It's just like her comfort read. And Jacinia says she's never heard of it. She doesn't know what that is. And Violet's like, that's weird, but really that's it. And then it tells us a little bit more about the books that have stories that are told like as bedtime stories to children, talking about Wyvern and Venom, and that they are like tales that parents would tell their kids to scare them. But nobody thought of it as real or anything. So that's just what it says at that part in the book, and then we learn more about it later. But there's no mention of it in the archives, and Justinia has never heard of it. Then after that scene, it goes through a lot of Violet trying to learn how to fly and ride the dragon and try to keep her seat. Most of the riders are able to fly on their dragons without falling off and without needing any assistance. But because of her disadvantages, because of the way her body's made, she can't do it. So pretty much Tairn has to use part of his magic to keep her on during flying. And it's a big problem. It's a big conflict throughout the book. Something else I wrote down, Tairn calls her a silver one, which it just makes you think it has something to do with her hair. But I still wonder if it has another meaning. We don't know. It didn't say anything. I'm just speculating. Then after that, we get a big ol' intense scene. In chapters 18 and 19, Violet is sleeping and Tairn screams to her in her mind during a dream to wake up before she dies. And when she wakes up, there are 7 cadets in her room trying to kill her. She's fighting them all, but she knows she's about to be toast. Like, she has no chance against 7 people. Even if she were a great fighter, she would have no chance. So she's doing the best she can. Tairn and Sigale are trying to get Xaden there, but she's pretty much about to be roasted. All of a sudden, Andarna screams in her mind and everyone freezes. And Violet has no idea what has happened, but she's able to move through everybody to get out of danger. And we come to find out that Andarna has used magic to freeze time. We'll learn more about her power in a second. Xaden shows up. He kills everybody. He's like, absolutely not. You've broken the rules. You're not allowed to attack someone in sleep. And he kills them all right there. This is a random note I have written in this exact spot. I don't know why, but Xaden is described as having black wind-blown hair with tawny skin, stubble, and eyes that are onyx flecked with gold. A lot of people think he's a person of color, not necessarily black because it says he has wind-blown hair, but a lot of people, my DMs, think maybe he's a person of Middle Eastern descent or Pacific Islander. A lot of different theories. I contacted Rebecca Yaros and I have yet to heard any confirmation. Somebody has said on a TikTok, she commented, yes, he is supposed to be a POC. But it's a little bit ambiguous to me. Tawny could be widely interpreted. But another thing it says about his appearance is it describes his cousin Bodhi, and it says they have the same bronze skin, strong brow line, but his features aren't as angular as Xaden's, and his eyes are lighter brown. Just a little bit more description we get of Xaden, but not much. After that happens, we get a scene with the dragons and Xaden and Violet. And we learn that Sigale can also talk to Violet in her mind, just like Tairn can, because Tairn and Sigale are mated. So Violet was surprised by that. This is where she learns Andarna's secret. And the reason that Feathertails have not come out to be bonded before is because Andarna is not a full-grown dragon, and that she's basically like a child. A child dragon. They say Feathertails don't bond because they can accidentally gift their power to humans, as Andarna did. They can't channel until they're grown, so they just gift it to the human. And the problem is, because they don't bond, a rider can easily drain them and burn out, which kills the dragon. She gifted her magic to stop time in order to save her life, but it does have a consequence, and it makes her tired, and she has to sleep for a while to be okay. It also tells us more about the signet. So basically it says it's a combination of dragon's power and the human's ability to channel, and it reflects who the rider is at the core of their being. They tell us that Andarna is a hatchling and she's only 2 years old, and that she'll be full grown in a year or 2. She guesses that Sigale and Tairn are Andarna's parents, but they say no, that her parents died before she hatched and they have just been helping her. Almost nothing is known about Feathertails because they almost never come out from behind the veil, which is where the dragons stay, whatever that means. Then we see a scene of a cadet whose signet comes in and he can read minds and it's eating him alive. And he's like freaking out and he starts to say everyone's thoughts out loud because he's panicking. And the professor who helps them learn their magic comes and straight up breaks the dude's neck and like kills him. And Xaden says it's illegal to have that kind of power. And so the guy just kills him. And so Violet's super intimidated by that. She's like, that guy just straight up killed that dude because of his power, and she did not like that. It talks about how rare abilities are the most valuable form of currency, and they have no say over what power they have. It just is. And then it starts talking more about how Violet is attracted to Xaden and no one else, and she's mad about it. After she's attacked, Xaden assigns Violet a bodyguard, which is Liam. And this is where we meet Liam. So Liam is described as one of the top first years from the Tales section. He also has a rebellion relic because his parents were part of the rebellion. He's described as statistically the strongest in the quadrant because of his times in the gauntlet and in the challenges that he's had. So Xaden assigns him to protect Violet. So Violet's not happy about that. She does not want a bodyguard. This is a scene where Xaden calls out the person who was behind the murder plot of Violet. Violet had seen someone sneaking in and out because they were like, how did people get in your room to try and kill you? So Amber Mavis, which is a wing leader, was the one who did that. So Violet told Xaden, and Xaden believed her, and Xaden accuses her in front of everyone of leading the attack on Violet. In the middle of this, Dane is ticked. There's like a brief line that Dane had a fling with Amber last year, and so he's like, whatever about her, but then also he doesn't believe that it's true because he's like, she's a wing leader. She would never do something like that. And Violet's like, how can you not believe me? Dane reaches out to touch her because he wants to see her memories without her consent. And she loses her mind. She's like, do not touch me. You did not ask if you could touch me. I'm not sharing that memory with you, because if she shared that memory with him, then he would also see Andarna's secret. And she did not want him to know that. So everyone's freaking out because how are they going to believe her? She asks Taryn to share the memory with the dragons. Taryn shares the memory with the dragons share it with their riders, and everyone knows that Amber is guilty. Amber is declared guilty. Violet realizes that they're about to kill Amber, and she does not want her to die because of it, so she asks for mercy. Taryn refuses her and kills Amber with dragon fire right then and there. It was a wild scene. Everyone was like losing their minds about it. The point of that scene was to say Xaden believed her no matter what, and Dane didn't believe her at all. So begins the end of Dane and Violet. Then we learned some more about Liam and Xaden. So Violet asks Liam, how do you know each other? You know, why are you doing this for Xaden? She learns that they were fostered at the same home after their parents were executed as part of the rebellion. So basically they're foster brothers. And the kids who are part of the rebellion call it the apostasy. They do not call it the rebellion. Apostasy means abandoning the belief of something. So it makes you like question, what was the rebellion about? What were they saying? What beliefs should be abandoned? So it kind of makes you question that. It also tells us that Liam has a little sister, and her name is Sloane. She's 1 year younger, and she'll be coming to the War College, to the Writers Quadrant next year, and that he was separated from her in their foster homes. This is where we learn that there are 107 children of the parents of the rebellion, and that Xaden is the oldest, and the youngest is almost 6, and she was born with the mark, which I thought was very interesting, and I don't understand. It doesn't say anything else about that. And then there's another point where Violet goes to the archives with Liam, and they see information about a battle in the archives. Then when they go to battle brief, they aren't told about it. Her and Liam are really sketched about that. Like, why didn't they tell us about that? That wasn't confidential. This is when they start questioning, are they keeping things from us? There's some more scenes about Violet and Liam's friendship growing, even though, you know, they don't really have any reason to be a friendship. He says he's happy to guard Violet because it protects Xaden, and he says he owes Xaden everything. But Violet's like, what does that mean? Most of the people in Violet's year can already channel magic, but she can't. For some reason, things take longer for her. And then in chapter 22, there's a moment where Taryn and Andarna decide that Violet's ready to channel power. They give her, as soon as she starts channeling their power, she has a stronger connection to Taryn, and so she can feel his emotions very strongly, and she doesn't know how to turn that off yet. And so it's like a wide open door to Taryn's emotions and feelings. And Taryn is with Sigale, and they are mated, and they are doing whatever they're doing together as mated dragons. And so it makes Violet have the same feelings. So she runs out to get a breath of fresh air, and she runs into Xaden, who is doing the same thing. And he gives her advice about how to close that off so that Taryn's emotions aren't so strong to her. This is where they kiss for the first time. He stops it and says he won't kiss her because she's feeling lust that isn't her own, because her emotions were connected to Taryn's. Since Violet has now channeled magic, she can start training her powers. So she's learning to contain things, she's learning shielding. It talks about how power comes from the dragon, but the ability to channel it comes from her own exertion. So she gets really tired learning how to train. Then there's a scene where Dane confronts her about the attack when the 7 cadets attacked her and the Amber thing. And they argue, and she says, you have to stop only trying to protect me, or there's no friendship here. He seems to agree, and things move forward. Violet sees on the board that Jack is up to challenge her, and she knows, like, she's toast. She has no chance of beating Jack without some kind of advantage. And so she has a plan, but we don't know what it is. She tells Liam that she's going to be challenging Jack, but she makes him promise not to tell Xaden because she knows if Xaden is there that he will do something about it and make her look weak, and she wants to fight him and get it over with. Jack uses his power on Violet when they're fighting and she's about to die and he injures her. She has a vial of oranges and poisons him because he's allergic to oranges. And so basically he's like fighting her and killing her, and then he goes into anaphylaxis and she survives. And by the time that happens, Xaden gets there, freaks out, and takes over her training because he says this is too much for him to let other people be in control of it. So we hear that he had daggers made for her. So romantic. He starts training her and teaching her how to fight. So they're sparring and there's like tension. He's telling her it's a terrible idea to get close because their dragons are bonded. So they're always going to be together. Supposedly he doesn't want to get together with her because it would cause problems down the road if something went bad. But Violet pushes back on that because she doesn't believe him. And there's another challenge as part of the war games. So the war games are like part of the Riders Quadrant challenges where they are competing against the other sections to win. And it's kind of confusing because they're like, whoever wins gets a chance to go to the front of the battle and see what's going on and like be a part of the battle. And people are like, okay, so we're competing to die faster. But that's what they're trying to win, the war games. One challenge is that they are supposed to get their enemy's most important item and bring it back to the leadership without their wing leader's help. Imogene is their group leader, and Violet has the idea to break into her mother's office to get the most important information. So they do that and they get like a map of all these important areas of the military, and everyone is shocked and can't believe that they did it, and they win. And because they won, they get to go to Montserrat, which is an outpost and a fortress. But while Violet was in her mother's office, she sees some secrets, more secrets of things that she realizes that are being kept from them, and she is questioning that. We also learn here that there's no stronger bond than two mated dragons, and that it goes beyond the depth of human love, and that they cannot survive without each other. So since they won that war game, they get to go tour Montserrat, which is a fortress. It tells us that there are 12 riders stationed there, and this is where Violet sees her sister Mira, and so they get to talk a little bit, and Mira is like shocked that Violet didn't die, and they have a moment. Rhiannon tells Violet they're less than an hour from her hometown, and so they sneak out to Rhiannon's home and they see her family and her new baby nephew. Mira gives her some advice that in order to channel her signet, that she has to stop thinking that it has anything to do with their mom, because Violet says something about not being good enough for her mother, and Mira's like, stop thinking that that has anything to do with your power, or you're never going to be able to wield it. Here is where Mira gives Violet the book of fables that her dad had given her, that she had planned to take to the war college, that Mira had taken out of her backpack because it was too heavy. She gets it back and she's able to take it back with them. And then they're talking about, I wonder how long our dragons can be separated since they're mated. And then in walks Xaden and he's like, apparently 3 days, because he comes to Montserrat where she's at because Sigale brought him there. Sigale and Taryn could not be separated. This is where we see Xaden is able to speak inside Violet's head for the first time, just like she can speak to her dragon and the dragons can speak to each other. She can speak in Xaden's mind and vice versa because their dragons are mated. And Taryn says that that's not always the case, but sometimes it is, and it's a significant advantage in battle. And it takes a while for Violet to be able to figure out how to do this. She can't figure it out. They're all talking with Mira, and all of a sudden they are told that a drift of griffins is headed their way and that Montserrat is going to be under attack. And Violet is told she has to go. She can't stay and fight. She does not want to go. Xaden also wants to fight and tells Mira he's their best weapon. But they all finally agree that they all have to leave. And Dane is like, we have to go for the lives of the other first years. Now, this is where Xaden kisses Violet and says, leave for me, Violet. She says, I will hate you for this. And he says, I can live with that. She's ticked at Xaden for making them leave Montserrat and that she hasn't slept. And Xaden says he hasn't slept in over 6 years when his dad left Eratia to declare secession. Then there's like a scene where Violet's like, when did you decide not to kill me? He admits that he's thought of doing more than kissing her, and he says, does it matter when, as long as it changed between us? And speaks into her mind. So when she was at Montserrat talking to Mira, Mira was like, you don't even know him. Stop acting like you like him. when you don't even know him about Xaden. So she realizes that that's kind of true, that there's a lot of things she doesn't know about him. So she starts asking him questions. She learns he doesn't have any siblings. His favorite food is chocolate cake. She asks what all the tiny silver scars on his back are from, and he doesn't answer. He says, you don't want to know. Perrin tells Violet that Xaden cares about her. There's more conflict about Violet still hasn't manifested her signet, and everyone's starting to worry. Another challenge happens as part of the war games, where Violet's wing is up against the first wing, which is Jack Barlow. They're playing offense and defense. Like, they have something they're trying to protect while they're also trying to get the other thing that the other team has. This is where Xaden and Taryn show Violet that they've created a saddle for Violet to stay on Taryn's back without him having to use his powers. And so now she gets in the saddle, she feels more confident that she can ride him and not fall off. Violet's afraid her signet is going to happen during the war games because she's starting to feel something weird. During the battle between First Wing, Jack tries to kill Liam. He stabs Liam. Liam is falling, and she uses Andarna's power to freeze time and save Liam again. And she's so angry that this has happened that she kills Jack with her lightning powers. So this is where her signet manifests and she kills Jack. As soon as she does it, she can't handle what she's done. She freaks out. She's like puking all over the place. And Dane keeps babying her and he's like, it's okay. You don't have to use your powers. And Xaden is like, shut up. Like, yes, she does. So stop making her think she doesn't. Then Xaden comes to Violet's room that night and she's throwing daggers and she's ticked. And he says he can't stay away from her even though he knows he should. They talk about her conscience with killing someone. And he talks about how it never gets easier, but that it's what must be done in war. And that her having a signet that's a weapon isn't something bad. It's something that's going to save a lot of lives. She wanted something that helped people, like her brother being a mender. And then this is chapter 30, where Xaden and Violet get it on, and there's a lightning storm, and they destroy the room. I don't know what happens. Xaden tells Violet he's the last thing she needs. She's like, I don't care. And then they're off, and they do whatever they do. They end up destroying her room somehow. And this is where we learn that the 107 silver scars on Xaden's back is a mark for each of the kids of the rebellion. And so he says that he saw a chance to make a deal for the chance of death over the certainty of death. And so he said he made a deal to be responsible for each of the children of the leaders left behind in exchange for the opportunity to join the Riders Quadrant. So pretty much he makes it sound like they were just going to kill everybody, like kill the kids, kill the parents, everybody's dead. And he says, I'll be responsible for them. Let us at least have a chance to be riders. And he says if any of the 107 betray Navarre, then his life is forfeit. So he put his life on the line for all of them. And everybody is like, Violet starts training her lightning power. She talks about how nature finds a way to balance. And the professor says Violet has this strong power to wield lightning, and he thinks that nature balanced it by making her body weak. It could be. Part of me thinks it's that nature gave her a conscience about killing. That feels like the balance to me, but I could be wrong. And then the professor tells Violet, Xaden is a powerful weapon, and you are a powerful weapon. You and Ryerson are the most coveted pair of riders that the kingdom has ever seen. Keep your loyalties clear, because together you'd be a formidable enemy who command simply would not let exist. So he's giving her a warning of like an implied, they're going to kill you if you try to get together because you two are too strong to get together. So then we get to Reunification Day, which is chapter 31. And Reunification Day is the anniversary of the battle at Orisha, where the rebellion happened and her brother died and all these things. They learn that the king is coming to Basgiath to celebrate Reunification Day. She asks Xaden for another, like, tell me something that I can know about you. Where did you go that one time I saw you right before the gauntlet when you were in the courtyard? And he tells her the name of an outpost that he went to. And she has that in her mind. She's just like, oh, interesting. And that was it. But it comes up later. Before the Reunification Day celebration, Violet finds a letter from her dad in the binding of the Book of the Fables. It's dated a few months before his death. And it says, by the time you find this, you'll be in the scribe quadrant. Remember, folklore is passed from one generation to the next to teach us about our past. If we lose it, we lose the links to our past, and it only takes one desperate generation to change history or erase it. I know you'll make the right choice when the time comes. You've always been the best of both your mother and me. And she's like, what does this mean? She assumes that he's saying some kind of analogy between the fables and what's happening, because she still does not see that maybe the fables are real. Xaden's like, that's cryptic. And she says, he turned cryptic after my brother died. And still we're like, what? It tells us a little bit about the fables. It seems like it will be important. So it said that there was an ancient kingdom that spanned ocean to ocean, and then there was a great war between the three brothers who fought to control the magic in this mystical land. There are stories of the first riders who tried to bond with dragons and how the bonds can turn on the rider if they try to consume too much power. There was talk of a great evil that spread across the land as man became corrupted by dark magic. It turned men into creatures called venin, which then created wyvern, which are winged creatures with 2 legs instead of 4 legs like a dragon. And it says the wyvern and the venin scourged the land of all magic in their thirst for more power. It had stories about the dangers of wielding power from the ground instead of the skies, as one could easily start drawing magic from the earth could be driven mad. It's saying that the venin are not bonded with a dragon, which is how they get magic, but that they draw magic from the earth. That's taboo, and it's like bad, and it can drive you crazy because you get too much power or something. But then they become a venin. Violet says that these were like bedtime stories to like scare children about the dangers of power, and that no one wants to become a venin because they were like monsters. So she's like, maybe my dad is trying to tell me that someone in leadership has too much power. And that's pretty much all she says about it. And then she moves on. And there's like more tension between Xaden and Violet, and Xaden's like, don't fall for me. And Violet's like, well, I'm not going to hook up with you and not fall for you because I can't separate the two. And he says, you won't fall for me. You don't know me at all. You don't know me at my core. And she was like, idiot, that's what I would say. She basically calls him out for being scared he'll fall for her too. He says, I have no intentions of falling for you. And she's like offended, but then they just agree, okay, that was a one-time thing and we're done. And then she's basically just like straight up, she's like, you don't get to tell me how I feel. If I want to hook up with you and fall for you, that's my choice. I'm responsible for my choices, so you don't get to choose. So basically she says, I'm not going to do that again right now, but if I decide to do that again and I decide to fall for you, that's my choice, not your choice. So that's where they leave it off, that they're not going to get together. Then it just kind of jumps time a little bit, a month after training, and she still can't aim the lightning. When she killed Jack, she wielded lightning. So it's like tied to her emotions, they're saying, but she can't figure out how to aim it. There's just more. Xaden keeps saying, I haven't changed my mind. There's still no future for us. And they keep going back and forth. Then it gets to the reunification day celebration, and the king is there, and Violet has like an interaction with the king and her mother talking about Xaden, and that Liam is there and everybody is throwing shade at him because he has a relic, and she realizes that none of the other children of the rebellion. So she goes to find Xaden, and Xaden's friends are like, leave him alone, you don't want to see him right now. And she's like, I don't care. She finds him up on the parapet and she goes up with him. He's like ticked that she's up there. She realizes she's in love with him. She confronts him about why he won't be with her. Then she convinces him to take her to his room. She talks about how at threshing, when Jack and those dudes came to her, she recognized that Xaden took a step, and that meant like he was willing to step in if she needed him, even though it was against the rules. So, comparison between Dane and Xaden, because Dane was not willing to break the rules for her and Xaden is. And so she's like, I love chapter 32. Violet tells him she's in love with him, and then they have escapades. They're interrupted by a knock on their door. It's the middle of the night. They think they're under attack, but it ends up being war games. They are told Xaden is going to an outpost outside of the wards, which is unusual, and Violet's supposed to go somewhere else, but then Xaden is like, no, she's coming with me. And Dane fights with him like, no, she's not going with you. And there's like a weird interaction and you don't really understand what's going on. Then we figure it out coming up. In chapter 34, it gives us some history. Before each chapter has a little blurb. This one, it tells us about griffins, and it says the first known griffin attack occurred in 1 AU, which is after unification, near what is now the trading post of Resin at the edge of the dragon protected border. The post has always been vulnerable to attack, and over the course of the past 6 centuries has changed hands no less than 11 times in what has become a never-ending war to secure our borders from our power-hungry enemies. Violet and all of her generation have been led to believe that they're fighting over their borders for these people that are trying to kill them and hurt them. We're going to find out something different pretty shortly. So Violet goes with Xaden and this group that he's put together to an outpost farther away outside of the wards, and she recognizes it as the name of the outpost that he told her him and Bodhi had gone to. That day when she asked him the random question, "Where did you go when I saw you before the gauntlet at the courtyard?" And he told her this name. She recognizes that's where they're going. When she goes through the wards, she feels a snap, and Terrence says that magic is wilder here outside of the wards, and that's all he tells her. Liam warns Violet about Xaden, and she's like, that's not a good sign because that's his bro. And he says, I just know his priorities. And so that was like a red flag. And there's a moment and Xaden is kissing her. Then all of a sudden someone appears and he's like so surprised and he's like, I'm so sorry. And it's a pair of Griffin riders, which in Violet's mind, what she's been taught, these are the bad guys. Like, this is who we're fighting. What's going on? And the Griffins are described as 1/3 the size of dragons with very sharp claws. And she realizes that none of the people with her are drawing their weapons. And she also realizes that everyone is the kid of a rebellion member. And so she starts to freak out. Xaden is just pleading with her to trust him. Liam is apologizing and she's freaking out. It tells us that Xaden addresses the Griffin riders, so it shows that he knows them and he's working with them, and she is so upset. We learn that Xaden is giving them weapons to fight Venin that destroyed a village, and Violet's like, what? No, those aren't real. Those are just bedtime stories. And he's like, they are real. They've been lying to you. And supposedly a Venin can only be killed with this special alloy. The reason that they are hiding this in Navarre is that that property is what keeps their wards up, and that they don't want to share it to fight the Venin because they want to keep themselves safe in their own wards. So Xaden has been giving these weapons to the Griffin Flyers. Violet realizes that Venin are real. She starts putting it together with things that she's noticed, with her dad's letter, with things she saw in her mother's office. She had seen a dagger Xaden has with the alloy. And so she is like, she knows they're real and she's lying to me. She starts to realize she'd been lied to. Now she feels betrayed by everyone because not only has she been lied to, the people that raised her and everything she's ever known, but also Xaden and Liam, even Taryn and Andarna knew and did not tell her. So then she realizes that their kingdom knows about Venin attacking these innocent people and doing nothing about it. And she's very upset. So she says, this is why there are raids at the border. These people are trying to get material to kill the Venin. And they're like, yeah, but she's still mad that he twisted the truth. He says that he didn't tell her because he didn't want Dane to be able to see her memories. And he's still worried that she's going to somehow endanger everything. So then all of a sudden, Taryn is like, something feels off, something's not right. They get to the outpost where they had been sent for the war games, and they realize that they've been set up because nobody else is there. The outpost has been abandoned. All they have left is a letter that says survive if you can. So they put it together that Dane had touched Violet and read her memories and saw the conversation where Xaden told her that him and Bodhi had gone to this outpost. And Dane and them put it together that they were being disloyal. They sent all these kids of the rebel leaders there to die. Liam can see very far away with his special abilities, and he sees Venin in the distance coming to attack. Everyone figures out that this is a test of their loyalty because if they leave right now, they can make it back to the place behind the wards, continue the war games, go on as if nothing happened, and prove their loyalty to Navarre. And if they do that, it lets this village be left to the Venin to die. Or they stay and fight and try to save these people, but are breaking their loyalty to Navarre. They describe the Venin as there's like red veins coming around their eyes. They say it's because it is taking their soul. The magic is taking their soul. They talk about that there's 300 innocent people in the village. And then the Griffin Flyer shows up, and the Griffin Flyer is like, you need to leave because this is a death sentence. The Griffin Flyer describes the last fight with only 2 Venin as being very hard, that they lost an entire city and 2 entire drifts of Griffin and their flyers. They decide that they can either live as cowards or die as riders. Xaden decides to stay and fight. He says he won't stand by and watch innocents die, but he's not going to force them to stay. He wants Violet to go, but he says, I'll let you choose. And she chooses to stay. They all choose to fight. And then they see the Wyvern, which are basically dragons, but with 2 legs and not 4 legs, and they're created by the Venin. Dragonfire does not kill Venin, that only this special alloy in this blade can kill them. The fighting starts, and it's crazy and it's wild. Soleil and her dragon are killed by a Venin. There's like a whole fight scene. Violet can't figure out how to aim her lightning. They don't know what they're doing. They're not going to win. They are overpowered. Liam abandons his dragon, jumps to save Violet. His dragon is fighting a wyvern and is killed, which then kills Liam also. There's a heart-wrenching scene of Liam's last words to Violet and to Xaden. He begs her to watch over his sister Sloane at the parapet. He says, please hear out Xaden because Xaden needs her. And then Xaden carries Liam to his dragon and Liam dies. And then they realize that dozens and dozens of wyvern are coming. Liam is trying to say before he dies that there are 2 riders for all the wyvern and nobody is understanding what he's saying. But then finally they figure out that if they kill the venom, the wyvern that they have created will die. During the battle, Violet unseats from the saddle because she has to fight this venom that has come onto Taryn. She's like, this is not gonna work. Like, I am going to die. The venom is unnaturally fast. She knows what Violet's going to do before she does it. And then she gets stabbed and has been poisoned. Taryn warns Violet that she's very close to burning out, that she's used too much magic. Violet realizes her only chance to save everyone is by killing this one venom that looks the strongest with her lightning. So she uses Andarna's power to freeze time. She directs one bolt of lightning at the strongest venom, replays time, and as soon as the lightning bolt hits him, he dies. All of the wyvern that he had created die. Xaden screams and kills the other venom, and then Violet falls from Taryn's back and Xaden screams, and that's all we know. It shows Violet's point of view falling off of Taryn and that Andarna pauses time again to save her and catch her. And then it says that Xaden gets to her and they realize that the stab wound is poisoned, that it has paralyzed her magic and her. She can't say anything or do anything, but she's aware of what's going on around her. They say her blood is black. They talk about they need to take her somewhere to save her. She's gonna die. And Xaden says there's somewhere else they can take her to save her. And she hears a familiar voice, but she can't place it. And she falls asleep. And then in chapter 39, we get Xaden's POV, which was fun. And we learn that Xaden is the grandson of Sigale's second rider, and that Violet has been asleep for 3 days, and that he stayed beside her to see if she's okay. It talks about how he's guilty for Liam. He realizes he shouldn't have fought his feelings for her. He has nightmares of her screaming. He describes all the times he knew that he cared for her. It basically gives like a really short and sweet point of view of all the times that he interacted with her and what he was thinking. Then she wakes up and she kisses him, and for a moment she has forgotten what's happened, and then she quickly remembers. And Xaden says that Andarna has lost the power to stop time and that she's also grown huge. She realizes that they're in Orisha and that they're in the process of rebuilding. She figures out that Melgren can't see the outcome of what's going to happen when more than 3 rebellion kids are together. So Melgren can see, like, his power is to be able to see what's going to happen. But whenever 3 of them are together, he can't see, and that's like a big deal. So then Xaden's like, are you in? What are we gonna do here? And she says she's in, and she's willing to fight them because she recognizes the lies that have been told and like what's at stake. But she still is like, I don't trust you. Like, you have broken your trust to me. I can't be with someone I don't trust. So she's enemies again with Xaden. He says, you still love me. I'm risking it all for you. I'll spend every day earning back your trust. He's gonna fight to keep it. You gave me your heart and I'm keeping it. So he's not letting her go easily. Then the very last part was the shocking ending where we see her brother Brennan is alive and he is the mender that saved her, and he is part of the revolution. He's there in Orisha. He ends it with, welcome to the revolution, Violet. And that was the end. So that's the recap of the entire Fourth Wing book. All the details you're going to want to know going into Iron Flame. Subscribe if you want to follow along and talk more books, because books make life better.